Welcome to True Crime Pulse, where we delve into the chilling and unforgettable stories of betrayal, secrets, and tragedy. Today, we unravel the heartbreaking story of Claire Herskowitz, a devoted wife and mother whose life came to a brutal end after discovering a truth that shattered her world. This is a story of love, deception, and a dark secret that led to murder. Claire Herskowitz was 40 years old, living what seemed like the perfect life in Boca Raton, Florida. A loving mother of two, she balanced caring for her children with running a successful internet marketing business from home. Friends and neighbors admired her for her warm personality and commitment to family, always present at school events or helping small businesses thrive with her online expertise. Her husband, David Herskowitz, appeared to be the ideal partner, minus 45 years old, running a local fishing tour company, and always smiling by Claire's side. Together, they had two children, 12-year-old Reed and 9-year-old Block, who attended the prestigious Pinecrest School. Claire was active in the PTA, constantly volunteering her time to organize school functions and fundraisers. She baked treats for gatherings, contributed to her community, and was in every way the heart of her family. But beneath the veneer of their idyllic suburban life, darkness festered. March 2016 was supposed to be a time of excitement for Claire. She was busy planning a family vacation to Disney World and expanding her marketing business, thrilled with a new project she'd taken on for a local restaurant. From the outside, everything in Claire's life seemed to be falling perfectly into place. However, the Herskowitz household harbored a sinister secret. David was not the man everyone believed him to be. For years, he had been hiding a second life, a secret that, once revealed, would lead to unspeakable tragedy. On the morning of March 18, 2016, Claire's neighbor, Mark Stevens, a retired police officer, was on his usual early morning walk when something strange caught his eye. The garage door of the Herskowitz home was slightly ajar. For a house as orderly as Claire's, this was an immediate red flag. Mark's instincts flared. He approached cautiously, calling out but receiving no answer. As he stepped closer, his gaze dropped to the floor. There, pooling on the concrete, was blood. His heart pounded as he pushed the door further open. Inside the garage, Claire's lifeless body lay on the cold cement floor. She had been savagely attacked, her body drenched in blood. A tire iron stained with evidence of the brutality lay discarded nearby. Mark's years on the police force guided his next steps. He immediately called 911, his voice steady but urgent, all the while keeping watch over the gruesome scene, ensuring nothing was disturbed. As he stood vigil by the garage, waiting for the authorities to arrive, he couldn't help but think of Claire, the vibrant, kind-hearted woman whose life had been so violently snuffed out. The investigation that followed would uncover the shocking truth. Claire had recently discovered her husband's double life. David Herskowitz, the man she had loved and trusted, had been hiding a series of affairs, lies, and financial troubles. Claire, devastated by the betrayal, had confronted him. The confrontation ended not with a resolution, but with Claire's brutal murder. As investigators pieced together the events leading up to that fateful morning, one thing became clear: Claire had uncovered secrets that David was willing to kill for. As detectives delved further into the life of David Herskowitz, they uncovered shocking secrets that shattered the image of a devoted husband and father. David had been living a double life. While maintaining the appearance of a hard-working family man, he was involved in an illicit affair with a colleague from his fishing tour business. The detectives discovered a series of secretive texts and emails between David and his lover, which revealed that their relationship had been ongoing for several months. This discovery painted a new picture of the motive behind Claire's murder. As they investigated further, the detectives found evidence that suggested Claire had recently discovered her husband's affair. Claire's phone record showed a series of calls and messages exchanged between her and a close friend, discussing her suspicions about David's infidelity. Claire had confided in her friend, expressing fear that her marriage was falling apart and debating whether to confront David about what she had found. On the night before her murder, Claire had reportedly told her friend that she was planning to confront David and demand the truth. This information led detectives to focus heavily on David as a prime suspect. His alibi was called into question, and they dug deeper into his whereabouts on the morning of March 18, 2016. So his colleagues told the detectives that he had arrived at work late that morning, acting strangely distant and distracted. Surveillance footage from local businesses showed David's car leaving his home at an unusually early hour, contradicting his claim that he had been at the office the entire time. The evidence against David began to mount. The detectives confronted David with the findings, pressing him on his inconsistencies in his affair. Initially, he denied everything, but under mounting pressure, David finally confessed to the affair. However, he continued to maintain his innocence in Claire's murder, insisting that he had no reason to harm her. Despite his denial, the detectives believed that the pressure of his double life and Claire's impending confrontation may have driven David to a breaking point. As they built their case, they awaited the results of DNA tests. From the crime it would solidify their suspicions. David Herskowitz had been keeping secrets that slowly began to unravel after the tragic death of his wife, Claire Herskowitz. Beneath the surface of his seemingly successful life as the owner of a popular fishing tour company, David was grappling with a deep financial crisis. His business, which from the outside appeared to be thriving, was actually drowning in debt. He had taken out several substantial loans, each one compounding the mounting pressure as his income fell short of covering the repayments. To make matters worse, David was having an affair of betrayal that would not only devastate his family but also bring suspicion upon him in the wake of Claire's brutal murder. On March 18, 2016, Detectives Sarah Pallett and Yandi Ruiz brought David in for questioning. The couple's home had become the center of an investigation that shocked their close-knit community. Claire's death was violent, an act that left the entire town reeling. Despite the gruesome nature of the crime and the loss of his wife, David appeared calm when he sat down with the detectives. His demeanor, however, was unsettling. There was a detachment in his responses that immediately raised suspicions. Though he professed his innocence, his behavior didn't fit the profile of a grieving husband. David claimed that he had been at his office during the time of Claire's murder, working late into the evening on paperwork. When asked if anyone could confirm his alibi, David faltered. He was alone, he said, with no one to corroborate his story. Pallett and Ruiz exchanged a glance. It was a weak defense. A man whose wife had just been murdered should have been more concerned, more emotional, and certainly more willing to offer a solid explanation of his whereabouts. His calmness, in the face of such devastating circumstances, made the detectives even more suspicious. The questioning quickly turned to David's personal life. Detectives Pallett and Ruiz had already discovered his affair with Jennifer Green, Claire's best friend, and confronted him about it. At first, David tried to downplay the relationship, but under pressure he admitted to the affair. He insisted, however, that his infidelity had nothing to do with Claire's murder. The detectives weren't so sure. As they pressed him further, David became more agitated, particularly when the subject of his financial troubles came up. He struggled to maintain his composure but still maintained his innocence, even as the tension in the room grew thick with the unspoken accusations. To get a clearer picture, the detectives delved into David's phone records and emails, looking for anything that could tie him to Claire's murder. What they found was damning numerous calls and messages between David and Jennifer Green, many of them sent in the weeks leading up to Claire's death. The content of the messages wasn't just personal. It was intimate, discussing plans for their future together once David's marriage to Claire ended. The affair wasn't just a fleeting dalliance. It was a fully developed relationship with a potential motive for murder. More than once, the texts alluded to a desire for a life without the complications of Claire's presence. The discovery of these messages added a new layer of suspicion, painting David as a man desperate to free himself from the burdens of his failing business and his marriage. Neighbors and friends of the Herskowitz family were interviewed as part of the investigation. Many expressed shock at the revelations of David's double life. He had always seemed quiet and reserved, a man who supported his wife and children, the picture of a dedicated family man. Claire, on the other hand, was outgoing and well-liked, involved in several community activities. The contrast between their personalities led many to believe that David had been hiding his darker tendencies behind a carefully crafted facade. Several neighbors even mentioned that they had noticed David acting nervously in the weeks before Claire's murder. One neighbor recalled seeing David pacing outside his office late at night, something he had never done before. Another remembered seeing him leave the house hurriedly on the night of the murder, though she hadn't thought much of it at the time. All of these little details, when pieced together, painted a portrait of a man under immense pressure, both financially and emotionally. Despite the growing suspicion surrounding him, David Herskowitz wasn't the only suspect in the investigation. Detectives Pallett and Ruiz also turned their attention to Jennifer Green, Claire's best friend and colleague. Jennifer had been a fixture in Claire's life for years, both professionally and personally. The two women worked together on various internet marketing projects and had shared countless personal conversations. In many ways, they were confidantes, each supporting the other through life's ups and downs. But Jennifer had been hiding a secret of her own, her affair with David. The discovery of this betrayal shifted the focus of the investigation. Could Jennifer have been involved in Claire's murder? On March 19, 2016, detectives brought Jennifer in for questioning. Unlike David, Jennifer was visibly shaken. She appeared nervous as she sat across from Pallett and Ruiz, her hands trembling slightly as she recounted her version of events. She admitted to the affair without hesitation but was adamant that she had nothing to do with Claire's death. According to Jennifer, her relationship with Claire had always been supportive, though she acknowledged that there were moments of tension, especially when they discussed their respective marriages. Jennifer's marriage was troubled, something she had confided in Claire about numerous times. But despite these occasional disagreements, Jennifer insisted that she had never wished any harm on her friend. The detectives, however, weren't entirely convinced. Jennifer's relationship with David added a significant motive to the mix. The affair was not only a betrayal of Claire's trust but also a potential cause for jealousy and rivalry. Jennifer admitted that David had told her he planned to leave Claire, and the two had even discussed a future together. This revelation added fuel to the fire, as it suggested that Jennifer might have seen Claire as an obstacle to her happiness. If Claire had discovered the affair, it could have led to a confrontation, one that Jennifer may have wanted to avoid at all costs. Throughout the interrogation, Jennifer was careful with her words. She answered the detectives' questions but remained defensive, particularly when asked about the nature of her relationship with David. At one point, she gloated that David had confided in her about his plans to leave Claire, implying that she believed their relationship would soon become official. This detail was significant as it indicated that Jennifer had been counting on a future with David, one that didn't include Claire. Could this desire for a life with David have driven her to commit murder? Like David, Jennifer's phone records and emails were scrutinized. Detectives found a trail of messages between her and David, discussing both personal and professional matters. Some of the messages were innocent enough, but others hinted at their plans for the future. In one exchange, David mentioned the financial stress he was under, and Jennifer responded with reassurances telling him that once things settled down, they could finally be together. These messages, while not directly incriminating, suggested a level of involvement that went beyond a simple affair. Friends and colleagues of Jennifer were also interviewed. Many of them expressed shock at the revelation of her relationship with David. They described Jennifer as ambitious and driven, a woman who was focused on her career and determined to succeed. None of them had suspected that she was involved in an affair, much less one with her best friend's husband. Some mentioned that Jennifer had seemed more stressed and secretive in recent months, though they attributed it to work-related pressures. Now, in the light of Claire's murder, those observations took on a new meaning. As the investigation continued, detectives Pallett and Ruiz knew that while Jennifer's affair with David was a crucial piece of the puzzle, it wasn't enough to directly link her to the crime. They needed more evidence to prove her involvement in Claire's death. The detectives remained focused on both David and Jennifer, knowing that one or both of them held the key to solving the case. So with each new piece of information, the mystery surrounding Claire's murder deepened and the pressure to find for Orr's intensified. On March 21, 2016, at approximately 3 p.m., the Boca Raton Police Department received a breakthrough in the investigation into the murder of Claire Herskowitz. The weather that afternoon was warm and clear, typical of Florida's spring climate. Detective Sarah Pallett, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for meticulous work, was at the station when she received an urgent call from forensic analyst Lisa Keang. Lisa had made a crucial discovery while analyzing Claire's cell phone records, something that could potentially change the direction of the entire case. In a quiet, yet tense tone, Lisa revealed that her team had recovered a series of deleted text messages from Claire's phone. The messages were exchanges between Claire and an unknown number, and their content shocked the detectives. Claire had discovered a deep and dangerous secret about her husband, David Herskowitz. According to the texts, David was running a secret gambling and sex trafficking ring under the guise of his fishing tour company. What appeared to be a respectable business, catering to Florida's wealthy elite, was actually a front for illegal activities involving vulnerable young men and women. many of whom were trafficked from Eastern Europe with false promises of modeling careers. As Detective Pallett carefully went through the texts, the urgency in Claire's tone was undeniable. She had uncovered her husband's dark operation only days before her untimely death. The messages revealed that Claire had planned to go to the police with this information, undoubtedly placing her in extreme danger. The text showed that Claire was fearful but resolute. She knew she had to act quickly to stop David. This revelation pointed directly to David as having a strong motive for silencing his wife. Alongside her partner, Detective Yandy Ruse, Pallett wasted no time in calling for an emergency meeting. In the dimly lit conference room, they presented the newly found evidence to the team. The detectives noted the dates and times of the text exchanges, which occurred just days before Claire's murder, solidifying the theory that her discovery of David's illicit operation was the catalyst for her demise. David Herskowitz's fishing tour company was far from what it seemed. Behind the picturesque scenes of sun-drenched yachts and deep-sea fishing expeditions, David had established an underground brothel casino on his boat. His wealthy clients, drawn to the allure of high-stakes gambling and illicit pleasure, were entertained with games like roulette and slots while indulging in the company of young women and men. Most of these young people were brought to America under the false pretense of working as models, only to be trapped in a life of exploitation. Many of the victims came from countries like Russia, Ukraine, and other Eastern European nations, where David had carefully cultivated a web of deceit. One of the names that stood out in Claire's messages was Olga Veryskova, a woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia. According to the texts, Claire had been in contact with Olga, who had traveled to the United States seeking answers about her missing daughter, Anastasia. Anastasia had been just 18 years old when she came to America, lured by the promise of a glamorous modeling career. Instead, she had fallen victim to David's trafficking ring and had disappeared shortly after arriving. Olga's desperation to find her daughter made her a key figure in the investigation, and detectives knew they needed to speak with her. On March 22, 2016, Pallett and Ruse brought Olga in for questioning. The 61-year-old woman, visibly weary from her arduous journey, spoke through a translator, recounting the harrowing story of her daughter's disappearance. She described Anastasia as a bright and ambitious young woman who had been filled with excitement about her future. However, after a few months in the United States, all communication from Anastasia had abruptly ceased. Olga had done everything in her power to find her daughter, even hiring private investigators, but all leads pointed back to one person, David Herskowitz. Olga had met Claire just days before her murder. During their meeting, Claire had shown compassion for Olga's plight, promising to help her expose David's heinous operation. Claire had vowed to gather more information and take it to the authorities, but 2 days later she was dead. The detectives listened carefully as Olga explained that she had collected documents and records about David's illegal activities, which she had hoped to use as leverage to force him into revealing Anastasia's whereabouts. She handed these documents over to Pallett and Ruse, providing them with a treasure trove of evidence to further their case. Olga's testimony painted a heartbreaking picture of a grieving mother, determined to find justice for her daughter. While her emotional state was undeniable, the detectives found no evidence to suggest that Olga was involved in Claire's murder. Instead, her cooperation proved to be invaluable in exposing David's criminal empire. As the investigation progressed, the detectives began to piece together the full scope of David's operations. It was clear that his crimes extended far beyond local jurisdiction, and they reached out to federal agencies for assistance in dismantling his trafficking network. David's business was not just a local affair, it had international ties, with victims from various countries and clients from the highest echelons of society. By March 24, 2016, the detectives had gathered enough evidence to formally identify David Herskowitz as the prime suspect in his wife's murder. With the financial records, communications, and testimony from witnesses like Olga, the picture of David's double life became clearer. The facade of a successful businessman had crumbled, revealing a man willing to do anything to protect his illegal empire. David, who had long been seen as a pillar of the community, was now exposed as a predator who preyed on vulnerable individuals for profit. His motive for killing Claire was irrefutable. She had discovered his secret and was ready to expose him. Faced with the threat of losing everything, David had taken the ultimate step to ensure his operation remained hidden. In the days following David's arrest, the community of Boca Raton was left in shock. The man they thought they knew was revealed to be a monster, and the depths of his betrayal cut through the town like a cold wind. Meanwhile, Olga remained steadfast in her search for Anastasia, knowing that the investigation into David's operations might finally provide the answers she had been seeking for years. For Detective Pallett and her team, the case had grown beyond a simple domestic murder. It was now an international investigation with far-reaching consequences. Their determination to bring justice for Claire, Olga, and the countless victims of David's trafficking ring was stronger than ever. The tragic case of Claire Herskowitz captivated the community of Boca Raton and left behind a lasting legacy of heartache, courage, and the unearthing of deep secrets. As the trial of David Herskowitz unfolded, the story of Claire's bravery in confronting the hidden life of her husband came to the forefront. It wasn't just about a murder. It was about a web of deceit that encompassed not only the Herskowitz family but the entire town, revealing the darkness that often hides behind suburban facades. David Herskowitz had led double life for years. On the surface, he was a respected businessman, a devoted husband, and a loving father to his 2 children, Grieve and Block. However, beneath that polished exterior lay a man deeply entangled in illegal activities, including gambling and sex trafficking. Claire, unaware of the full extent of David's criminal dealings, had initially trusted him, but as their marriage began to unravel, she grew suspicious. It was Claire's courage in confronting the truth that ultimately led to her death. Fearing that Claire would expose his secrets, David became increasingly desperate. His debts were mounting, and his illegal business operations were on the verge of collapse. As Claire dug deeper, discovering the extent of his betrayal, David realized that his entire life, his family, his business, and his freedom was at stake. He decided that the only way to protect his empire was to silence Claire permanently. The police investigation into Claire's murder was thorough and painstaking. Detectives Sarah Pallett and Yandy Rue, seasoned investigators with the Boca Raton Police Department, were determined to find her killer. The evidence against David began to mount, starting with the discovery of deleted text messages between him and Claire. These messages revealed a growing tension between the couple, with Claire confronting David about his shady business dealings and his involvement with illegal activities. Her last text to him showed her fear, as she realized just how dangerous her husband had become. Further incriminating evidence came from David's financial records, which painted a picture of a man in deep financial trouble. His accounts showed large sums of money being funneled into offshore accounts, likely tied to his gambling and trafficking operations. Phone records placed David near the scene of Claire's murder, despite his alibi of being at a business meeting. With each new piece of evidence, the detectives grew more confident that David was responsible for Claire's death. On the morning of his arrest, Detectives Pallett and Ruse arrived at David's office at 10:00 a.m. The tension in the air was palpable as they walked through the bustling halls of the office, where David was holding a meeting to discuss future business plans. When the detectives entered the conference room, the atmosphere shifted. David looked up from his presentation, his face a mixture of shock and resignation. He didn't resist as they calmly informed him of his arrest, but he maintained his innocence, insisting that he was being framed. Handcuffed and led out of the office, David's world crumbled around him. Outside the building, a crowd of curious onlookers and media had gathered, eager to catch a glimpse of the man accused of killing his wife. The arrest of such a prominent figure sent shockwaves through the community. Boca Raton was a tight-knit town where scandals were rare and people prided themselves on maintaining appearances. But now those appearances were shattered, and the town was forced to confront the ugly truth lurking beneath the surface. Claire's family was devastated by her loss but relieved that the police had finally identified her killer. Her sister, Michelle, had been one of Claire's closest confidantes and had supported her throughout her tumultuous marriage. Michelle was in the courtroom every day during David's trial, her face etched with grief and determination. She wanted justice for Claire, and as the trial began, it was clear that the prosecution had built a strong case against David. Assistant District Attorney Karen Whitfield led the prosecution. At 38 years old, Karen had a reputation for being tough on crime, with a sharp legal mind and an unwavering commitment to justice. They knew that this case wasn't just about murder, it was about uncovering the full extent of David's criminal empire and ensuring that he paid for all of his misdeeds. In her opening statement, Karen laid out the prosecution's case, detailing how David's desperation to protect his illegal activities had led him to kill his wife. She presented the deleted text messages, phone records, and financial documents as evidence of David's guilt. The defense, led by Richard Palmer, a 45-year-old attorney known for his sharp legal acumen and calm demeanor, faced an uphill battle. Richard argued that David was being framed, that the evidence was circumstantial, and that the real culprits were the individuals involved in David's illegal operations who had more to gain from Claire's death. He tried to cast doubt on the validity of the text messages, suggesting they had been tampered with, and pointed to the lack of direct physical evidence tying David to the crime scene. But the prosecution's case was solid. Witness after witness testified, painting a picture of a man who had been living a lie for years. Claire's friends and family spoke of her growing fear in the days leading up to her death, how she had confided in them about her suspicions and her plans to leave David. Financial experts detailed the extent of David's debts and his involvement in illegal gambling. Tech experts explained how the deleted text messages had been recovered, showing the progression of David's increasingly desperate and threatening communications with Claire. Throughout the trial, Claire's family sat in the courtroom, their grief palpable. Michelle often wiped away tears as she listened to the details of her sister's last days, the brutality of her murder, and the lies that had consumed her marriage. Claire's children, though too young to understand the full extent of what had happened, were also present at times, surrounded by family members who tried to shield them from the worst of the testimony. The trial lasted 3 weeks, with both sides presenting compelling arguments. But in the end, the overwhelming evidence against David proved too much for the defense to overcome. On August 24, 2017, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. David Herskowitz was found guilty of first-degree murder, illegal gambling, and sex trafficking. During the sentencing hearing, the judge condemned David's actions, calling them cold, calculated, and driven by greed. He sentenced David to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, the courtroom was filled with a mixture of relief and sadness. For Claire's family, there was some solace in knowing that David would never again harm anyone. But the pain of losing Claire remained. Her children, Grieve and Block, would grow up without their mother, and though they were now in the care of extended family, the loss would be a scar that would never fully heal. For the community of Boca Raton, David's conviction was a wake-up call. The trial had shone a light on the dark underbelly of illegal activities that could exist in seemingly quiet neighborhoods. Boca Raton had always been seen as a safe, affluent community, but Claire's murder had shattered that illusion. In the months following the trial, community leaders organized forums and workshops on safety, vigilance, and the importance of supporting one another. Fundraisers were held in Claire's honor, with proceeds going to support victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. Olga Vereskova, the mother of missing Anastasia, found some closure in David's conviction, though her daughter had not been found. Olga continued to work tirelessly to raise awareness about human trafficking, collaborating with organizations like the Polaris Project and speaking at events across the country. Her advocacy helped bring attention to the issue and provided support to other families searching for their loved ones. Jennifer Green, who had been caught up in the scandal due to her affair with David, faced a difficult road ahead. Though she had been cleared of any involvement in Claire's murder, the revelation of her affair had destroyed her personal and professional life. She took a leave of absence from her job and eventually left Boca Raton, moving to a new city in an attempt to start over. Her former colleagues and friends tried to support her, but the stigma of the affair and its connection to the murder left a lasting mark on her reputation. The trial of David Herskowitz left a deep impact on Boca Raton. It exposed the dangers of hidden lives and the devastating consequences of secrets. Claire Herskowitz's bravery in confronting her husband's criminal activities had ultimately led to her death, but her actions also brought justice to a community and helped dismantle a dangerous criminal network. Her courage inspired many, and her memory was honored in the months and years following the trial. As time passed, the residents of Boca Raton worked to heal from the tragedy. They remembered Claire not just as a victim, but as a woman who stood up for what was right, even in the face of danger. Her legacy became a symbol of the fight against injustice, a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the power of one person's determination to make a difference. For Claire's friends and family, the sentencing of David Herskowitz marked the end of a painful chapter. They would never forget the loss of a beloved mother, wife, sister, and friend, but they found solace in knowing that her death had not been in vain. Claire's courage had uncovered the truth, and her fight for justice had inspired a community to come together and confront the darkness within. The story of Claire Herskowitz serves as a powerful reminder of the hidden lives that can exist in even the most idyllic settings, and the devastating impact those secrets can have when they come to light. As Boca Raton continues to heal, Claire's legacy lives on, a beacon of bravery and a testament to the importance of standing up for what is right, no matter the cost. Join us next time on True Crime Pulse,